Good morning. I am Roberto G. Sagi Jr. from West Visayas State University, and congratulations to all the presenters. I have one question for each. Okay. Starting off with the first presenter, how did the researcher address possible differences between the quilter's intended meaning and the researcher's interpretation of the quilt design? For the second presenter, what type of phenomenology was used? Because it was not mentioned. Because the specific phenomenology has something to do with how you interpret the data, because the abeyance is one of the things that we have to consider. And for the third presenter, the study focused on identifying the lexicons, although this is not a question, but you might consider also considering it as a qualitative research or qualitative descriptive research with ethno-linguistic approach rather than just saying it's descriptive research, because usually if we do descriptive research, the notion is that it's quantitative in nature. And for the last one, how are the local terms selected and verified as authentic to the barangay, is it Lataban, correct? Barangay Lataban, and was the glossary developed, evaluated by experts? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we're asking about the sir, no, how I interpreted the design. So I incorporated or like I analyze it from the lens of visual and compositional analysis. So basically, when I interviewed them, most of them, ang ilag yung iingon ra is how did my question was like how did they came up with the design? Most of them would say it just comes from what they think or observe. So a follow-up question was more of like where does it come from actually? Ingon sila nga, sa ilaha lang maobserbahan sa ilang palibot, and especially when since they are most of them magod kay women, and their observation is basically when their husband will come after muuli sa balay after fishing. So that's where I came to an assumption, at least an assumption lang, to be safe, no. The designs are from their observation. Okay, if you look at the quilts, no, all of them would consist trees. All of them would consist fishes, marine life. They're also everyday life nila, like fishing, even like they're also mini humans in the design. So it's very kind of what do you call this? It reflects their life in the island. As you may observe, mura siya limited view ra gani ilahang kuan kay within the island rang ilahang ma-put in the design. There's no buildings, there's no kind of foreign human, for example. It's all their likeness and their being. So that's where I came from. The more of like it's an observation of my interaction with them as well, and how it reflects their own perception or their own way of designing the quilts.
Yeah, thank you. You have a follow-up question, sir. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Is there a member checking, or was the data triangulated with your informants or participants in connection to how you created the meaning of the design?
Like, sorry, sir. What do you mean by?
Because you mentioned that these designs were, it's right that you did interpret, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's my own interpretation,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
Yeah.
Was the interpretation validated, or was triangulated, or was there performed a member checking on if indeed your interpretation is the actual meaning of what the quilters has made?
Thank you, sir. Actually, wala to nag-asa na, but definitely kani mo the study is still ongoing. So,
Yes.
but thank you so much for that, sir, for enlightening me on that part. I will definitely do that after.
Okay, yeah. Maybe you can do that in the future, because that's very important, that we need to make meaning out of the context of your informants, not just our meaning. Thank you.
I agree, sir.
Thank you, sir, for that. Actually, kanang murag, I also agree with your sentiments about the study, but his study more so really explored on the lived experiences of the quilt maker. So that's why in his study, it really explores on how they entered the industry, how the experiences brought. Well, ako nag-answer sa question. But the way I understand it, since it's really on exploring the lived experiences rather than trying to triangulate it with some claims. But however, I believe this is also a first study, no, kanang conducted for specifically for quilt. And down to my question, for my question, sir, is on the design, no, on how phenomenological, but it's really more on descriptive where I explored the essence of the lived experiences. But in its essence, the phenomenological research method is more on exploring the lived experiences of each individual, specifically to my kanang ako ang respondents, and with that I use a framework called Kolaisi 7-step method, where it's really common good for those who explore in the community development sector, listening with the stories of each sectors, especially in the vulnerable communities. So that's why this study, you know, if ever sir na mo ask pod ka regarding sa triangulation, I explored also that I partnered with the Mandawi City LGU Ask. That's why I've also recommended in my recommendations, I had submitted the recommendations regarding the local policies to embed it in their city, no, to recognize the cultural practices and whatnot. And since mine as well, it's also a first study, no, to explore regarding the lived experiences of the broom makers. It's also imperative that we also explore that for other researchers. And really my niche is my niche in conducting studies is really the lived experiences of these livelihood workers. And in my previous study as well, I actually studied a livelihood in Iloilo, the budbud making in Miagao, the salt making there. So it's also wala pa siya na explore na study. So yeah, more on the lived experiences of these sectors, trying to get narratives from their stories and make policies that ensures their livelihood is being sustained, recognized, and used by those who live in the community. Thank you. A follow-up question, sir.
First of all, thank you so much, sir, for reminding me of the ethno-linguistic approach. Yeah, it's really true po. Nakalimutan ko po yan. Focus on the descriptive alone, no, sa paglalarawan, because I forgot that it's really true po. Kasi pumunta po talaga kami sa bawat lugar. Pinuntahan po talaga namin. We listen to them. We observe how they cook. So, I agree with you that I need to add that one in our research. Mas palaliman pa po. So, maraming salamat po, sir, for adding that one.
Hi, sir. Okay, for the question, I actually typed it here in my phone. How do the local terms selected and verified and glossary developed and evaluated by the experts? Honestly, this paper, I made it like 2 years ago. And then I developed this as my thesis. And I just recently finished my thesis last December. And the process, the methodology process, I didn't actually, wala na ko siya gitagsa-tagsa na. But the process, it goes like, first we did an archival research for this one, wherein we identified the different archives and documents, and then select the terms which we can associate sa barangay. So these are cultural terms related to their history and institutions as well. And then after that, we had a preliminary list of our terms. And with this preliminary list, we then interviewed people like, do you recognize these terms? How do you define these terms according to your own experiences? And people then were able to not only define, like usually when we define words like the technical definitions, but during our interviews, we get to get their stories as well behind these terms, like what do we mean by bujong for them, like what do we mean by alho for them, and from there we can see the stories, their agricultural experiences, like few years ago, like katong totally agricultural pagyud ang ilahang way of life. And then after that, we get to get our definitions of the terms. For the glossary, how was it developed and evaluated? For that, 2 years ago, it wasn't really evaluated. Although I had my Dr. Lita Bacaria, which was my advisor at that time, who get to check the glossary. And since I developed this one into my thesis and I was able to come up with more than 100 terms, and by that, masasabi ko na it's more comprehensive. We get to have a lot of stories concerning our barangay. Being our barangay, it's not just a simple barangay, it's actually the mother barangay of the rest of the mountain barangays in Liloan. So it was really the largest barangay in the municipality. So we can trace back its history, like from the Japanese or perhaps even the Spanish period as well. So during my thesis, then my professors and other validators were also able to check them. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So I'm curious about how, the tensions, no, frictions between two languages. I understand that you speak Tagalog, and you interview the Cebuano lechoneros, the mga ngasal. I wonder if, what are the tensions, no, that surfaced during your interview with the Cebuano-speaking lechonero, and how do you address these tensions?
Yeah. Okay. So far, Mama, no, during hati-hati po kasi kami, ang aking na-interview po banda ay doon sa Bantayan Island, no, and then dito banda sa Talisay or what, no. So far, yung experience po natin is yung ginamit natin na language po ay Cebuano. Oo, Cebuano po yung ginamit po natin para mas maintindihan. But fortunately po, our Cebuano lechoneros, they know how to speak also Filipino. So when we ask them in Cebuano, nagtatanong kami ng Tagalog, no, tapos sinasalin po namin sa Filipino. They answered us also in Tagalog and Filipino po. Pero kasagaran, no, Cebuano din po yung sinasabi na we just kung makikita niyo po, no, we use the tambok gihapon, the busok, those are mga words na lumabas po sa kung ano po yung ginamit nila, yun din po yung ginamit po namin doon, and then we just translate it in Filipino. Kasi hindi din, katulad po ako, hindi din po ako Cebuano, no? So hindi ko rin po naintindihan lahat po ng mga sinabi po nila until na when my colleague, no, Dr. Largo and Dr. Kinko was also helped me for the interpretation po of the words that I have used. So hindi po siya madali kasi kahit ako nga po naman nanaliksik, ay hindi ko rin nga po, kanina nga yung pag-pronounce pa lang sa busok o mga ganun, no? So, yeah, it matters. And then, kung titingnan natin, kung i-record din natin yung mga pag-pronounce po nila ng Matigaldes, iba-iba din yung kanilang pag-e-spell nga ng Betsen, Bitsen, something like, iba yung kanilang mga pronunciation. It matters din po doon sa paraan ng kung paano nila binibigtas sa particular na lugar. So, halimbawa po dito sa may Bantayan, medyo malambot ng konti, no, yung pagkaka-pronounce nila, at dito banda naman sa atin ay medyo matigas na po. Bantayan Island, medyo malambot po yung ng pagkakabigas. And then, dun po ako na-amaze na yung lechon pala po ay pinapahiran ng buko para maging mapula, because I thought na yung pinapahid ay yung toyo, tsaka para maging mapula. But there's a magic, or sabihin natin secret, no, sa kung paano nila ginagawa yung kanilang paglilitsyon doon. Then, I still remember is, pare-pareho silang gumagamit ng suka, toyo, or what, pero meron na ng difference, especially in using of the tanglad, and then also the pandan leaves, no, merong ganon. So, nakita ko na kung ano yung mas marami sa kanilang lugar, na sa kanilang mga tanim, yun yung kalimitan na kanilang ginagamit. Salamat po, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Canasa. We have one comment here.
Okay, I'm Romeo from the Cebuano Studies Center. Actually, have just brief from each of you. For Christopher Petrata, yes, I graduated from Japan, Hiroshima University for my PhD. So I've taken an interest Kawagan. Although I did not, I was not here when you started. So if you can elaborate a bit with the Japanese connection and into the quilt making in the island. For the second speaker, sa silhig sa Mandaue ba, in relation to the conference theme for the environment, if you're going to elaborate this connection, I'm actually quite expecting you to explain how did they manage to put ang silhig dito sa may fish pond area, and then if I'm giving you a chance to elaborate on the environmental part. Although your discussion on livelihood and their anxiety of displacement and all are important, waiting for your answer there. For the third speaker, I would like to hear what ethical safeguards have you done to protect the recipes and trade secrets of these lesioneros? Na with the publication of your research, you could potentially, affect their business in a way, though it's important, and I would like to hear more about that. For the fourth speaker, not really a question, but it's more of a comment and actually a quite concerning one, because every time you say now we don't really know local culture and all, there's a lot of studies done about local terms and lexicon. I'm just wondering how much effort have you done in relating your study with already existing literature, and if not, the Cebuano Studies Center would be very open to welcome you for assistance in future endeavor ba. Okay, for example, if you're going to have a list of glossary of terms, there's already a lot written. And then if you're gonna create your own, basta ma-isolate ang knowledge ba, it would be nice if you could, we could probably collaborate on this part na, and then you could see how the local realities of Barangay Tabatan, in Liloan, Kataban, Liloan, is actually a part of the larger Pan-Visayan, culture and linguistic identity. That would be. Thank you.
Who wants to start? Mine might be long. So, you're studying in Japan right now? You're done. Okay. So, the quilt or the quilting technique was passed on to Kawagan Island because there were a Japanese couple who bought the island, and they wanted not just to build a beach house there, have the kamarag. They don't want to kaya ganing itakwil ang mga residents sa island. So they actually build development plans there as owners of the island. So the island's actually managed as well, or shared managed with the LGU of Lapu-Lapu. So right now, the quilting technique was passed on by Junko, the wife of Katsuhiko, and then it was passed on as a livelihood project or as a livelihood plan for the women of Kauhagan as additional income. But then eventually they developed their own design or style of the quilts. So if you observe in Japanese quilts, that could also be a further research for those interested. Japanese quilts has this very shapes lang usually ginatahi. A square, rectangle, mga kung ano gid siya kanang lines of work ang quilt. But in Kauhagan Island, they developed their own design, and they didn't follow a certain pattern. They didn't follow any patterns that was offered to them by Junko or the wife. So that's how they started and developed the Kauhagan quilt. And right now they have turned 30 years na in the kuano. So it's I would say I think I like to go back sa question ni Sir katong last. Di siya documented right now, I would say, based lang on my literature review or research. Di siya documented. Most of them are just articles or during when they have exhibits abroad or here in the Philippines. So if you would like to take on the study for Kawagan, definitely please. I think they need more exposure and promotion of their quilt products. That's all.
Thank you. To answer quickly, what you saw sa tong picture nga It's actually owned by, of course, also murag local kanang supplier for the tiger grass, and it's been long kanang dugay na siya na murag source of tiger grass of those who live in Paknaan, and then they just buy the tiger grass and then make on their own sa ilang backyards. So with that, actually kanang that's also a challenge for them. That's also a challenge that mentioned in the study. It's hard for those who live in Paknaan to also outsource for their own tiger grass. It's because of some development nga mga urban developments, and then other market struggles, market vulnerability. So that's why in terms of its connect to the environment, at some point those communities mismo sa Paknaan are dugay na jud sila na displays or whatnot. So that's why it's hard to document really on the history where they source out their tiger grass or how they kuan kanang even them they also struggle on documenting their identity when it comes to getting those materials for their own livelihood. So it's also a systemic problem where something currently Mandawi City LGU is trying to address.
Okay, good morning. When we talk about ethical consideration, we ask consent. But you know what? You will be amazed because the Manlilichon there were so very interested to tell their story, to tell their secrets. No? Hindi naman po ito sila yung galing sa mga Ricos Lechon or those who are mga CNT, but these are just, their work is mga lechon lang for 10 years up. No? So, matagal na silang naglelechon. So, we just want to know and ask them. And then we return. We go back to them and show it to them our research if they have something to say. Kung baka may na-miss kami or what, no? So far, natuwa naman sila. No, yun. So, no problem in terms of, what you call this, secret. Maybe that's one way that, sabi nga nila, isang bagay kasi na hindi naman nakasulat ay parang hindi nangyari. So, ang buhay nila ay may limitasyon din dito sa mundo. Why not share it to others so that they can learn also something about our culture? Thank you.
Hi. Thank you for that comment regarding my study and what I spoke earlier. I believe it is true that Cebuano Study Center really took the initiative to study a lot of things related to Cebuano history, and that would include local history. I think that statement comes from a standpoint where a lot of educational researches mention that based on the results, especially during the qualitative results of these studies, it mentioned that a lot of teachers doesn't actually know local history because one of the reasons is that they lack resources when it comes to local history. And when I also searched further about it, like the lack of resources, it also is linked towards the fact, perhaps not in Cebu City, but also in other places in the country, which it mentions that there's not much of a local history studies. And if there is any, the question is it accessible for the people to actually learn about it? Perhaps in these halls, we have an access to them, but accessibility is always a question to many because in these siguro ivory halls, we have an access to knowledge, but what about those outside? So I think it's also necessary to share and disseminate this information. Although I believe that our Cebuano Studies Center also really took the initiative to spread our local history. And I think we have to do more also. Like we have to continue doing what we're doing to promote our culture and history as well. So thank you for that.